All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar. We're going to take the next few minutes to let other people join and then we'll get started. All right, just updating everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're just taking the next minute or two to let everyone join and then we'll get started. Okay, so let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar, Diversity Unleashed, 30 Insights from 3 Successful Women. We are excited to have you all here. Before we get going, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. This webinar will be recorded, and after today's discussion, we will be sure to send a follow-up email with that recording. And we'll also leave time for questions at the end of the webinar, so please post any that you have in the chat or the Q&A box below. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and welcome you all again to today's webinar. My name is Sarah Breckenridge, and I'll be the moderator of our discussion today. And now I'll introduce our 3 panelists. We first have Kelly Matheson, our Chief Client Experience Officer at Digital Asset. Before DA, Kelly spent 26 years at JP Morgan Chase and 3 years at Goldman Sachs. Her roles at JP Morgan have included head of JP Morgan's Global Collateral Management and Securities Clearing business, head of Global Custody Product, head of Online Brokerage Product Asset Management, and others. She was also instrumental in aiding the Federal Reserve Bank of New York with the tri-party repo reforms post-2008. Kelly also serves on the Greater NYC board of the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. Next, we have Emnet Rios, our Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer at Digital Asset. Emnet has over 20 years of experience leading finance and operations organizations for both enterprise and early stage companies. Prior to Digital Asset, she spent over 10 years with the Royal Bank of Scotland, where she was heavily involved in the bank's restructuring efforts following the global financial crisis. Earlier on in her career, Emnet spent 5 years at IBM in various leadership roles at the firm's corporate headquarters in New York. And last but not least, we have Susan Hauser, chairwoman of the board at Digital Asset. Susan spent 28 years at Microsoft, holding a number of executive positions, including corporate vice president of the Worldwide Enterprise and Partner Group, vice president of Microsoft's Worldwide Industry and Global Accounts Organization, sales director for the financial services business, and general manager of Microsoft's Customer Advocacy and Licensing Group. Prior to Microsoft, Susan worked in the financial industry at DecisionX and Charterhouse Financial. She began her career as a special education teacher in the New York City public schools, working with children with learning disabilities as a resource room teacher and then a classroom teacher. So welcome panelists, and thank you for being with us today. All right, so today our panelists will share insights into how women can hold their own in the rapidly changing field of finance, sales, and technology, how to stay motivated, pitfalls to watch out for, and tips to accelerate impact. Without further ado, let's jump right in. So starting with Kelly, followed by Emnet, would you each explain a bit about what you do at Digital Asset and what it's like being a C-suite executive at a technology company?
Sure, and thank you so much, Sarah, for that introduction. For everybody who's joining us today to be part of this important discussion during Women's History Month. I'm just delighted to have the chance to talk about it again. But so while I've been involved in technology for years and am part of Digital Asset, which is obviously a technology company, I'm not a technologist myself, and that might make you wonder why joining DA was both interesting to and made sense for me. Well, throughout my career, which is in financial services, as Sarah mentioned, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, every role I have ever had, every product I was involved with or managed, heavily relied on technology to define the product, to operate the product, to manage the product, deliver it. And so in my prior experience, this was instrumental, was critical to the delivery of the service that we had, financial products or systems used to clear and settle trades, the analysis and calculations to manage risk, software used to interact with customers. And I've also had the opportunity to live through some seminal events in the markets, from the 1987 crash to the rise of online brokerage to internet, and then the tech bubble and its demise, 9/11, the effects of the global financial markets crisis. And all of those experiences, in all of those, technology played a key, if not essential, role. So simply put, after working 30 years in an industry that had relied so heavily on technology and suffered, frankly, so greatly when technology didn't work as intended or as needed, I wanted to be part of a broader solution. I wanted to be part of a team that was changing how the business of finance and business processes across industries was being done, and that's what attracted me and why I joined Digital Asset.
Thanks, Kelly. Emnet, same question.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for the intro. I too am delighted to be here. As you mentioned, I'm the CFO and COO here at Digital Asset. I oversee the day-to-day finance, HR, and operations functions for the organization. Maybe more generally, I'd say I'm responsible for taking the vision of the company and of our co-founders and turning it into what I would say is an executable business and operating plan, complete with the controls necessary to govern the organization. It's also my job to provide transparency to our stakeholders around the progress that we're making, both from a financial perspective and a strategic perspective, and to ensure the various teams within DA have the resources and the foundation that they need to execute on the company's objectives. I joined DA back in 2016, coming off of more than a decade-long experience working for a European bank. I'm not sure what I expected to find in a startup organization, but on balance, I think it's fair to say I've been, very pleasantly surprised. In the past 5 years, I've worked with just some of the most amazing and magnificently talented people, Kelly and Susan being among those magnificent people, will both attest to the fact that, we're literally surrounded by passionate, self-motivated, highly intelligent individuals who all share really the same vision of fundamentally improving the way businesses operate and interact through innovation and technology. So it's not hard to be inspired by that and to want to step out of my comfort zone, which is I also don't have a technical background, but to contribute in any meaningful way to what is really a very positive vision.
Thanks, Emnet. Okay, and now Susan, I have a more specific question for you. How did you come across Digital Asset? And why did you choose it initially to start as an advisor and then a board member and now the chair of the board?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you, Sarah, for that wonderful introduction. And again, it's such an honor to be on this panel with such great women, yourself included, and Kelly and Emnet. As I think about my career, and as you mentioned, 28 years at Microsoft, in a lot of ways, it was a startup when I started at the company. And throughout my experience at Microsoft, it was about being able to be part of something that started out with an idea or a passion, and really working with great people to bring it to market in a bigger way. And so I had this incredible career at Microsoft where I had the opportunity to really grow businesses and to work with great people in a global way, and really to have a purpose that was bigger than myself in terms of the initial sort of mission of the company, a PC on every desktop, and then folding into more about how to achieve more for every individual organization in the world and globally. And so when I left that, I really had to think hard about, what would I want to do in my next chapter? And there were a couple of elements that drew me to digital asset. One was, is there a company out there where I could actually bring something, but also learn a lot? That was important to me. Second, it was having a company that was also had a purpose, that I could really get excited about their innovation. And when I met Digital Asset, and I actually met Digital Asset, I was introduced by my very first mentor from Merrill Lynch that I met in my early 90s and introduced me to Digital Asset. I got excited about what digital asset could mean to globally for innovation. So that was really, it got me so excited and all the passion there. But the second and was equally as important, maybe even more important, was the people. I got a chance to meet Emnet and Kelly and yourself, by the way. You're three people that made a very big difference in my decision, first to become an advisor, then to join the board, and then to become chair. But it was, the people, the executive team, but everyone in the organization that I met were not only bright, but also just so passionate. And the fact that it was really critical to them that there was initiative and a focus around diversity and inclusion. So it was the passion, it was the innovation and the people that really inspired me to join. And I'm even more excited the more I got to know the company, and there's an incredible future ahead.
Thanks, Susan. Yeah, so one of the first things that you and I talked about was actually DA's own diversity initiative, which is called DAversity, focused on promoting inclusion and gender diversity in the tech industry. So I'd like to pose another question to Kelly. What's it like building a diversity and inclusion program from the ground up?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be fair, I think it's a question that I've sort of been asking and answering at different stages in my career, whether joining a new organization, such as in a new industry for me, such as that at DA, or whether I was joining a new team at JP Morgan. I think the way I sort of think about it is throughout my 35 plus year career, diversity has been an industry issue. In my case, it was financial services. Now I would say technology, or maybe it's an industry opportunity. Whether it was on trading floors in the late 1980s, breaking glass ceilings so that women and people of diverse backgrounds have equal opportunity, to more now making sure that women and people of diverse backgrounds are given the opportunity for both the education and the ongoing experiential skill sets to both join organizations and get to leadership and positions. So what's it like building one from the ground up? Well, I think for us it means that we're rooted in a couple of important grounding points. That diversity in the workforce is as important to driving business success as it is to personal empowerment. It's been proven countless studies that diverse workforces produce more complete perspective on a product or service, or on how to work with clients, more sensitivities to the regions, industries, and client environments. Competitive companies deliver better products and services this way, and businesses grow more successfully in time. So building it has to be grounded in that the end goal here is that not just simply a better work environment, importantly for the people that are doing it, but that is going to produce the best, whatever it is that you make. In our case, it's a software product, but whatever it is that you make, better for the industry and for the clients, it will have a ripple effect. I think that the second thing is having an honest acknowledgement that there are, and sort of not sugarcoating, that there are still many challenges across industries specific to these that need to be overcome. When women and people of diverse backgrounds enter an organization that has a low diversity representation, say in technology roles or in other organizations, the risk is that they sort of can be branded as being different rather than being assessed for their actual skills or experience. It's the female technologists or the person of color technologists rather than it's just the technologist. So there's a real need and focus to requiring that women, frankly, at all levels of work hard to ensure that they're just not seen, women and people of diverse backgrounds, that they're not just seen as that definition, but they're seen for the outstanding performer, measured on equal standards, and the like. And it's really just having this focus as a diversity organization of being really honest and candid and openly talking about the challenges, whether consciously or unconsciously, that occur with us as individuals and with us in the organization overall. And I think it's also just having maybe a reasonable goal. Over the course of my career, I've seen results, but clearly not enough to eliminate the debate, and there's much more to do. So I don't, as a proverbial saying, I think it's a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, you talked about some of the challenges in kind of supporting diversity and diversity initiatives. And so I wanted to pose a question specifically about digital asset to Mnet. How is digital asset supporting diversity, and could the company be doing more? If so, how could we improve?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I mean, just to pick up where Kelly left off, I mean, I think when we set out to start DAversity, we knew it would take time, especially when you're an early stage company and there's plenty of distractions. We are very fortunate to have a tremendous amount of support from our board, led by Susan, our chairwoman, and from our CEO. So we're able to explore different avenues and make adjustments as necessary. We're now in our 6th year of operations as a company. And we have a really good balance of longer tenured employees and more recent hires. So I feel like we're constantly on the receiving end of excellent feedback, either with respect to where we have gaps and could be doing more, or on different approaches that we could take to drive further engagement. We're seeing incremental improvements, I'd say, in awareness and in engagement on the back of our efforts to bring diversity to the forefront of the conversation about our culture and about our values. We've also seen improvements in our ability to attract members of underrepresented minority groups. But there's always going to be more to do. And as much as I enjoy scratching things off of my to-do list, I think embracing concepts of diversity and inclusion or in the workplace or in society more generally is something that companies need to continuously work on, and DA is really no different in that regard.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. I think it's a process, and you have to be patient, but kind of going off of that idea, Susan, the discussion about diversity has been really gaining momentum. So how long will it take to see the results from the current debate?
Yeah, no, it's great, great question. And, picking up from both Kelly and Mnet's comments, it is a journey, and you want to be able to see improvements along the way. But if you treat it just as a sort of a program, it needs to be part of the culture. And it is so critical. I so agree with both Mnet and Kelly in terms of it is the right thing to do from a people standpoint, but it also, I have seen in my career that, your business results and what you can achieve is far greater when you have a, diverse environment. And it's important that it's diversity and inclusion. I would say, some lessons learned early in my career. I and a few others sort of helped to establish and build our very first vertical organization for financial services. And at the time, I was an account manager for a group of financial companies. And I was very typically the only female in a room, both internally at the company, but also with customers. And so when we did get this investment, we said, okay, we're going to post this position and we're going to get, diverse candidates. And no one came to respond because we weren't really known in the community. And so we took a little bit of a longer term approach where each one of us became involved in a community diversity type of organization. Like I joined Women in Wall Street, someone else joined Blacks in Technology, and we really became engaged in the community so people would get to know us and we could attract great talent. But over time, we started to see the results that when we posted a position, we had a diverse slate of candidates. Now, we always hired the very best for that role, but we started to see that we had a better pool of candidates. And over time, we started to see that our teams became much more diverse and making sure that we were providing them with an environment that they could best excel, because not everybody wanted to be treated the same way. So it's one of those where you have to keep sort of investing in it. But I would say that part of it really is events like this, having the open dialogue, checking in with employees, having surveys, making sure that, you're really listening and walking the shoes of your employees. And I will tell you that the results are so much better when you have, a diverse and inclusive environment. And I'm excited about what I've seen over this last almost 2 years being involved with digital asset, but it's a journey and we're going to just keep going.
And I'll just add to that, as a CFO, I tend to be very ROI focused. And for me, diversity is simply well worth the investment. I mean, it's not just something that businesses need to be concerned about from an optical or an ethical standpoint. It's also important, really important for the bottom line. So many studies have shown that companies with more diverse teams have considerably higher revenue. And especially when you're a company that's focused on innovation, I think it's critical to incorporate the broadest set of perspectives, particularly when you're playing in a space where your customers are from a variety of industry verticals, business backgrounds, geographies, and so on.
Absolutely. And that's so true. I think in every possible role, whether it's engineering and how you build a product to all the way to frontline customer engagement, being able to reflect your clients and be able to be empathetic to that. I completely agree that the results are there.
Yeah, and the three of you clearly have a lot of experience and knowledge when it comes to this. So I kind of wanted to also get into how you got to where you are today, or the path that led you to where you are. So Kelly, and then Emnet, and then Susan, what were some of the challenges and how did you overcome them? And also, please mention any mistakes or pitfalls that women should look out for.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was thinking about it earlier today. It's sort of, how would I answer it? And I kept just coming back in my head to saying I might slightly turn the question around a bit and say, what are the challenges that women and people of diverse backgrounds face today that hopefully are even likely to start changing over the next several years? And so what is it that we're doing now that's causing positive change, that's starting to overcome the historic pitfalls and mistakes? And I think the obstacles we face as women and people of diverse backgrounds in technology, and I'm going to go on a particular path here with regard to education, because I think it's something we tend to overlook and not spend perhaps enough time in, is we could start early in the education system. Most technology, science, engineering, math, STEM programs tend to attract men over women over time, particularly at higher education levels. And I think that we as individuals, and even as organizations such as DA, we can and we must create or contribute to the creation of curriculum in these fields of study that appeal to both genders, from all the way down to elementary school through college and postgraduate programs. And I think as technology leaders in the industry, either as individuals or like Emnet and Susan or our organization, I mean that sort of at every level of our organization. We need to have a real sense of responsibility for creating a path for girls, young women, people coming out of university. We need to make sure the technology companies, and I know, Susan, you've done a ton of this in the past at Microsoft, so I'm probably leaning heavily on your experience, but the technology companies are purposely working to attract female applicants. They're principally making sure that they're eliminating male-dominant cultures. And this starts with everything like what we've done at DA around rewriting job descriptions to be gender attractive across, offering flexible work environments, which is, an interesting change post-COVID. But I think that it's for me, it's the focus on that. What are we doing now that you can see is starting to affect change, and what should we keep doing? What do we want to get momentum about? And I think that many technology leaders who come from diverse professional backgrounds, diverse experiential backgrounds, bring unique perspective to organizations, DA included, that really can begin to get some momentum. And so I know that a lot of this focus is on what I should do and what pitfalls should I avoid, but I think there also has to be a good measure of focus on what we can do as a collection of people, as industries and as companies in industries, to begin perpetuating the good things that are starting to happen now.
For me, I guess I'd say I've been really fortunate in my career in that I've worked for and amongst some very supportive and inspirational leaders. My current boss and our CEO here at DA, for example, invested a fair amount of time with me when I first started, helping me to understand the value that I contribute, notwithstanding the fact that I don't come from a technical background. Simply said, I needed to get over the fact that, I wasn't going to be able to contribute to every single important decision in the company in a meaningful way, but that didn't necessarily translate into me not being the right person for the job. So I think a common problem today is that as women, we sometimes tend to underestimate our accomplishments and overweight our shortcomings. And that can result in a lack of confidence if you're lucky, and intense feelings of self-doubt in more extreme circumstances. So I think having a supportive environment is critical. I learned recently in one of our diversity meetings that most women will only apply to a role if they feel they meet 100% of the job requirements as advertised, whereas men will apply if they meet 60%. And I don't know how accurate that stat is, but it resonated with me personally because it speaks to the fact that as companies think about how to embrace concepts of diversity and inclusion in their cultures and in their hiring practices, I think they need to be very mindful of these differences in perception.
Yeah, that's. I think both Kelly and Emmett raised such incredible points. And before I answer the specific question, Sarah, it does remind me that I really do feel strongly that rising tides sort of raises all boats. So when you do it well and you really have focus on, here we're talking about women, it's really better for everyone. And sort of to bring it to your question about lessons learned and some of the challenges. When I started early in my career at Microsoft, I was the only person in the office at the time that had young children. And I would leave at 5 o'clock to get home to sort of have dinner with them. And then I would go back to work. But that mostly everyone sort of stayed in the office late hours. And at some point, my manager had brought me in, and I think I almost got fired because he thought that I wasn't happy or I wasn't really doing the work. And I realized that I was kind of hiding the fact of what my lifestyle was instead of sharing it. And I basically said, look, don't, sort of judge me for the way I work, but judge me for my outcomes. And I never want to be treated, special, but I needed to have that conversation. And he, sort of like light bulb went on, and he realized that maybe I worked differently, but my outcomes were great. So I wasn't getting fired, thank goodness, and then we ended up having a conversation with the whole team. And one of my coworkers at the time, a gentleman, his grandmother was very ill, and he sort of fessed up that, he'd like to leave in the middle of the day to visit her, and if we could sort of help out and cover him. And so all of a sudden, by being open and having the conversation, everyone sort of then started to speak up about maybe they had something unique, and it was just changed the environment. And so I always think about that in terms of being transparent about that and being comfortable. Second part of it, I would say, is that really developing and growing my network of people around me that I could feel comfortable to have those conversations. And I was so fortunate. There were a number of other women over the years who also had young children, and we'd sort of, kind of get together at these sales meetings and sort of talk about all these, challenges and, and our concerns, and whether we were able to apply for certain roles, because the fact that we did wear, multiple hats, and getting the confidence. I think you hit a nail on the head there. I think having confidence, but sometimes you have to sort of branch out and make sure you spend the time with other people as well, and build those relationships up along the way to build up that confidence to be able to go for those jobs. I encourage that, and this is a great forum.
Yeah, and thank you. I just noticed we have a question, so why don't I ask you guys right away? If leader layer has boys club culture at the top, how to positively tackle with this kind of culture? I guess the question is, if there exists a boys club at the top, how do you positively interact with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think fortunately we don't have that at DA, so it's been refreshing to come to an organization that has a different culture and a different leadership model. But I've mentioned to all of you that I grew up in the financial markets in the 80s and 90s, so it would be crazy, frankly, for me to say that I haven't personally experienced that environment. I think it's a couple of things. I think first it's you have to be able to control and manage what you could do, which is your performance. And this might not be particularly popular, but you have to be prepared to work really hard. You don't let opportunities wait to present themselves to you. Go pursue them. There's a saying, you're the best author of your own career path. So seek to define it and sort of actively and aggressively pursue it. And I say that not to mean that the environment is the responsibility of a single individual, but in order to be able to begin to affect real change, to break those glass ceilings that I mentioned, you first have to have your own platform of success and of track record to be able to do that. Then I'd say the second thing is, I'm going to pick up on one of Susan's points that was excellent. It's important to build your network of influencers, of people that can give you different perspective, different counsel, expand your knowledge or your understanding of a topic. With that knowledge combined with your own performance, you are best equipped to argue, present, and begin to enact different change. I mean, yes, you're going to want and need for those leaders to have an audience to listen to it, to be open to hearing it. But if you can come from a position of strength where it's your performance or the evidence of effort, and you're expanding your information so that you can equip yourselves with some of the comments Susan said about really being able to serve clients better or competitively improve the strength of the company, or Emnett's point about ROI. If you can equip yourself with that and do so with the strength of numbers, in my experience, some of the glass ceilings that I've seen broken and frankly been part of breaking have always come when it's the strength of an individual surrounded by a team of people or a network of people that are willing to voice the same points.
Yeah, I think, this whole concept of making the time to network, one of the things I did every year was actually sort of sit down and think about what was my non-negotiable for the year, both personally and professionally. Personally, it could have been, I wouldn't travel on my kid's birthday, for whatever reason. That was my personal, and didn't matter what meeting, but that was my decision. And then professionally, I'd always sort of ensure that I did something to grow my knowledge, whether it was getting a certification or going to training, et cetera. But also, I would also sort of make a list of people that I was going to try to network with or get to know outside of my own group. And as the years went on, that really became important, because they would either be supporters, to your point, or give me opportunities as well. The one thing I would say in terms of, the club, so to speak, and again, for me personally, I just didn't want to imitate them. I tried to be true to myself and drive the best results. Whatever it was that I did, I held that bar up really high.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. I mean, at the risk of being repetitive, I think it's all about really believing in yourself and your abilities. I mean, you are where you are for a reason, and if there's an opportunity that you think you're qualified for, or that you want, you need to go for it. Don't be your own naysayer, because I think everyone on can probably attest to the fact that there is no shortage of naysayers out there. So whatever it is you decide to do, and for whomever it is you decide to do it, I think committing to doing your best, removing the self-doubt that tends to paralyze us all at times, and always be open to, if not purposeful about, stepping out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And a lot of women, especially I think in my age, can identify with the confidence piece. It's sometimes hard to remember that you are qualified and totally equipped to be where you are.
It's all ages.
And yeah, you can't psych yourself out.
Oh, there's no doubt.
Definitely
Yeah.
at all ages.
All the more reason, surround yourself with people who are going to build you up and give you the objective perspective of, no, you really are that good.
Yeah. These are all great points. So now let's move on to our next section of questions. Kind of comments on the future for women and technology. So Kelly, we'll start with you again. What are one or two key principles or experiences or activities that you think will propel women forward in financial services and technology?
Okay, some of them are going to, just because they're so important, I'm going to say them, they sort of reflect on some of the points that we've made now, but I'll try and say them a little bit differently. What I would say is sort of take on new challenges and experiences. It kind of leverages a little bit from the point that we were just making of have confidence in yourself to know that you don't need to be 100% qualified for a particular role. But I would also say extend that to a problem or an issue or a crisis, like has marked my career. Run towards those. They're going to be the moments that you not only gain the issue experience, but you begin to advance your ability to make decisions, your network, your comfort with risk or not having full information to make decisions, your knowing what to look for the next time. So embrace those opportunities to add to your experience, not just sort of piece by piece, step by step, just in increments beyond your existing boundaries, like really, challenge yourself to work on something that is outside of your comfort zone, or to be part of something where you go into it not quite knowing how you're going to handle it or how you're going to do it. And then the second thing I would say is, just to resonate on the point, build your network. And I say this knowing that the folks on this call are already investing in their experience and their skill set. So to me, just to say it a little bit differently, building your network, it expands your contacts and the people you can call on. But really, more importantly, it begins to expand the available information to you. It expands the different opinions and perspectives on which you can rely. I always like to say you're the grand sum of your experiences at any moment, but that grand sum can include the network of people on which you can rely for close counsel and information. So what I tend to hear from people is, I have to remember to do that. I don't have time for it. But but build it into your schedule. Schedule one-on-ones with, particularly in this age of COVID, where communicating with people on Zoom is probably easier than it's ever been before. Take a few minutes to have a virtual coffee, learn about someone, expand your network, because by doing so, you're increasing the denominator of the knowledge and the information that you know.
Yeah, yeah, great answer, thank you. And similarly, another question for Mnet. What steps can women take to accelerate their impact?
I would say, I mean, I'd say a couple of things. I mean, it was something like 80% of overall consumer spending controlled by women. I think the opportunities for women to have an impact are really countless. Internet companies, as an example, exist, largely to address the needs of people. So if women aren't sufficiently represented, then I think, organizations like Amazon or Wayfair or Airbnb, regardless of their success to date, are clearly missing out. And then the one thing I would say that we can all do to have an impact is to pay it forward. I mean, if you've ever been inspired in one way or another, which most people have, make a commitment to inspire others. I think you'll be surprised by the network effects.
Yeah, yeah, and that's kind of similar to the networking point that Kelly made, and so I guess pay it forward, a similar theme. Susan, how can others play a part in inspiring the next generation workforce?
Yeah, I think, really great points in terms of, pay it forward. I think early in my career, I would volunteer for projects, even when I wasn't comfortable. It sort of exposed me to new people. And even though I didn't have an official mentor, I called them mini mentors. And I would make sure that I would grab coffee or just spend 15 minutes with a variety of people each year, that I would sort of grow that exposure. And that always led me to new roles and new opportunities that I couldn't even sort of be able to see at that moment. But it was just continuing, again, growing your network and feeling comfortable enough to taking that leap for a project that you might not be fully, ready for, and taking that plunge. But part of it is also, I think, mentorship. And so as I sort of, went through my career, I was able to sort of turn around and help others and be a mentor to them. But what's interesting about those mentorship roles, that very often when I would mentor someone that is maybe younger in their career, I would learn just as much from them as they would learn from me, because all of a sudden I was able to get exposed to the next generation of potential great employees that I could really understand what they were thinking about. And I think that's really critical, is to be able to not only be a mentor, but to be a mentee. And even in my last role at Microsoft, which was, running the largest sort of sales organization, I had a mentor who was just, out of school. And I wanted to make sure that I did a bit of a reverse mentorship where I learned from that person. And I did. I learned so much from them. And it was so important to be exposed to that and to be able to get that opportunity. So I think it's, making the time and making sure that you kind of continue to do that, but investing in yourself. I can't, stress that enough, especially now in technology. I think it's such an exciting time because, things like empathy, user experience, things that I think in quality wise that people, women and people with diverse backgrounds can play such an important role in terms of both, the impact and the innovation. So I think now more than ever, there's an incredible opportunity for women and others to really have a different kind of career. I think obviously coding is very important and it's great in the deep technology, but there's also just so many other kinds of roles that people could really excel and contribute to in the world of innovation and impact on individuals and organizations.
Yeah, yeah, all really great points. And so now, so after we've discussed the future of women, diversity, all of your paths to where you are, now I wanted to ask a rapid fire kind of short answer question or two to all of you. So just answer when you know what to say. So let's start with, if you could have dinner with someone alive or dead, who would that be?
Amy
Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead. You go, please.
I said Amy Schumer. I think we all need to laugh a little, and he just cracks me up.
That's good. That's good.
True to form, I can't pick one, but I'll say them really quickly. Picking up on Emmett theme: Walt Disney, Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, and my great grandpa.
Eleanor Roosevelt was mine, actually. I just, just because of her, philanthropy and her, sort of was an incredible impact. And anyway, I thought that would be fun. But they all sound great. Maybe we can join together and we'll have dinner together.
Over Zoom.
I love that question. It changes over time, but it's such a great question.
It is.
And who inspired you?
Actually, for me, it was someone that I met early in my career that was one of the first sort of female executive that I got to know. This woman, her name is Jerry Elliott. She's actually an executive at Cisco right now. But what was so great about her was that she was just incredibly professional, and I learned so much by watching her. But at the same time, when we were, sitting around, we could chat about things that were just typical things. She was a real person, and it was the first time that I realized that you could be a female woman, a leader, be on that stage, command, thousands of people, but yet be a really nice person and actually, ask about your kids or talk about your kids getting into the, college, et cetera. And she really inspired me, and she's continues to be someone that I'm always inspired by.
For me, I mean, it's too many people to name. I mean, I candidly, I know this is going to sound cliche, but I get inspiration from the three of you every single day, and I try to get inspiration through most of my interactions. Though I can't always say I'm successful.
I'll probably echo Emmett's point. It's probably echo Emmett's point. I mean, there's so many, but the theme that ties them all up, it's whether it's family, friends, or colleagues. It's people that I can use as sounding boards. And what I mean by that is that they also keep me very grounded, like to make, to think about decisions or the impact on my life or aspects that, that have a foundation of common sense, right? And they allow me to sharpen my perspective, see things from another angle. I mean, some of my best people that inspire me are people that I pretty much never agree with.
They're the best, right?
Yeah, right. But I trust their judgment. So it's all of those people that create this constant sounding board for me, where I can kind of it sounds corny, but it's true, become my best self, right?
Definitely. Having that honest conversation is so critical.
Kelly and I have it every week.
Okay, and the last one is what technology will transform the future?
I think we all know and can say it together. Ready?
Ready.
Daml.
For sure. But true, the elements of Daml, and that's really kind of goes back to your very first question, is why I got excited, is that I truly believe that Daml is a way for companies to really transform and innovate. And I think about some of the struggles formerly, where I saw companies not being able to innovate because it was too costly, or they had too many different systems, or it took too long, and or they were afraid of things like security or privacy, and they'd have to build all of that. I do believe that Daml has just an incredible opportunity to really modernize and innovate, workflow, multi-party, really create new businesses. So I think that's so exciting, and I do think that there's a lot of technology, and although like I think Emmett and Kelly, my background is in technology, in that I'm not a deep technologist, but I get so excited about what technology can do. And it's always the sort of the outcomes, whether it is autonomous vehicles, or it's things like AI, or the change or future of agriculture, so we can provide food and make sure that people aren't going to starve, and be able to create other ways of climate control. There's so much of that, but in a lot of ways the underpinning will be the ability for multi-parties to trust each other. So there's the outcome and what it's going to be able to do, and then there's what's behind the scenes. So much to look forward to.
You make a really good point, Susan. I'll tell you what I'm thinking about you and about the topic that you're referencing when you say that. It's like in the age of COVID, landing on Mars, non-astronaut space travel, all of which mark meaningful contributions by brave, influential women and people of diverse backgrounds and experiences. So, the underpinning of what you're saying is maybe it's not the technology, but it's rather the technologists that will transform the future. And the way you're referring to what we're doing, I would say in large part comes from the people itself, men and women, that are contributing to that innovation.
Totally.
Very well said.
All right, so we have some time for some questions from our participants, and I'll read. The first one here is from Francesco, and this question is for Susan. It's well known that larger organizations like Microsoft have initiatives to hire and promote women. As women leaders, do you have to now deal with people believing that you were promoted simply because you filled a quota? Any tips in dealing with this challenge?
No, it's a great question, and it came up, very often, and I thought about it a lot as well. And so it is really critical that when there's a position that you do want to have we would sort of call it a diverse slate of candidates, but they have to be qualified candidates, and then you hire the very, very best person for that role. And I think that is really critical in demonstrating to organizations that, in fact, that if you have a diverse slate, you're going to have exposure to different people, but you always hire the very, very best person. On the flip side, I have seen where early on, where there was a push for diversity and it became a scorecard item versus a culture, I saw some behavior that maybe was not the right behavior, where people brought diverse candidates in to fill something that was a scorecard, and they weren't necessarily the best candidate or had the qualities or could do the role. And that's the worst thing that you could possibly do, because that sort of backfires. So I think it really is about making sure that you are getting and investing, whether it is investing in education of, as Kelly had mentioned, of kids early on, to sort of ensure that you have a runway of potential candidates for the future, but always hiring the very, very best person for the role, and making sure that it's very clear what the expectations are.
Yeah. And we have a few questions, so I'll go ahead with the next one. You have a wealth of experience between you. Based on all that you have seen, if you could ask your male colleagues to do one thing to better support gender diversity in your company or the industry as a whole, what would that be?
I'm happy to start. I'm sure that Susan and Emna have great perspective on this too. I'm going to go back to or to lift from a point that Susan made when she was talking about her career and being evaluated on the outcomes. And I think, and sort of what I was saying earlier about overcoming the sort of the statements we put on people, like she's a female technologist, she's a person of color technologist, so she's a this or he's a that, and look at people not as if they're not humans, but look at them for the humans that they are and evaluate them on their outcomes. Create an environment where it's the performance, where it's the results, where it's the effort that is being made. I mean, they could all be different depending on the business, but where it's the result of someone working hard or doing something with effort, and not on the person that's doing it themselves. You have to sort of take them as whole beings and don't see them as gender or diverse. See them for the results they contribute to the company's or the team's goal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think the only thing I would add is, maybe see the value of all perspectives. I think that's super, super important, not to be closed-minded or to shut off something that just doesn't resonate with you immediately. I think it's important that we all keep an open mind, and especially at a company like Digital Asset, where we're so geographically distributed and we have people literally from every corner of the world. With that, the benefit of having an organization like that is that you get the value of a very diverse array of experiences and perspectives. And I think it's very important that we as leaders, are keeping our ears open and an open mind about the different angles that people come from.
Totally. Yeah, I think so well said. And I always think about this as it's not a one size fits all, and being able to allow people to sort of get to the outcomes in giving them the room to get there. I found as I sort of went up my career ladder and became an executive, which you're always crunched with time and there's not a lot of time. And so there's very often I want to just tell someone, okay, I've done this before. Here's what you do. And here are the steps, and sort of sitting on my hands and saying, okay, don't say that, because you know what? They may have a different, a path to get there. And matter of fact, they may have a better path, but, just giving people that room and not sort of succumbing to the pressure of, we got to get this done. And here, I've done it before, so just do it this way.
Yeah, and I think back to kind of what we were talking about earlier about just starting the honest conversation, that kind of, at least with the experience we've had at Digital Asset, starting that conversation, starting an initiative dedicated to diversity, and then you kind of look up and you find that everyone is in agreement, especially we have a mostly male employee count. And so I think there's actually probably more men than women in our diversity group as it stands now. So it's all about starting that conversation, and you'll realize that everyone is on board and everyone just wants to help push the cause forward. And this is another interesting question. Have any of you taken time off for childcare or elderly care? And if so, how was your transition back to the workforce? What did you appreciate most about a successful transition, or what would you have changed about a challenging one?
Well, I'll take that one. I actually took off time after my second child. And as a matter of fact, at that very same time, I had applied for a position at Microsoft. It was a part-time position. So I actually started at Microsoft part-time. And the only reason I applied was the fact that I had just had a second child, and I thought it would be a good way to balance. And I'll share this real quick, but I remember at the interview, a male person who I think meant well pulled me aside and said, by the way, there's a full-time position available. And I said, well, no, I really want this part-time role because I have 2 young kids. And they said, well, if you take this part-time role, you'll never amount to anything here. And your career will be, you won't have a career. So of course I said, well, that's okay, because I made a trade-off and I decided. But in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to prove that person wrong one day. But and that person didn't do well. But anyway, but I did take the slow route. Yeah, exactly. I did take the slow route when my kids were younger, and at some point we decided, and my husband became a stay-at-home dad, but sort of that's a side story. But the point was that it was a personal choice. and making it and taking the time and then starting with this company and then sort of taking my time until a certain point. But I do remember when at Microsoft, there was a change in policy where men could take off a month. And I think that's more now. But anyway, I remember the first male that took off. He was so nervous, that he was going to be the first male to take off. And remember having this conversation with him and trying to support him, saying, yes, go. And once he did it, all the other men sort of did it too. But I think to your point is, it's a personal choice. You have to balance. I always say you're going to always feel guilty, and that doesn't go away because you're always going to feel like you need to be doing something else. But I think it's, all the things that we said before. It's the networking, it's the feeling the confidence, it's the investing in yourself through that process is the most important.
And I'll just take the flip side of that. So I have been very fortunate. My husband has a pretty flexible job, so I didn't take much time off to be with my daughter. But I got just as many comments and remarks saying, why aren't you going home, and why aren't you as focused on parenting or whatever the case may be. So I think the bottom line is you just have to do you, and you know what's best for you. You know what choices you need to make, and just have confidence in those and keep moving forward.
Totally.
If I can just pick up on the confidence point that Emma just made, but maybe talk about something different. I had gotten to a point, or my father had gotten to a point where he was very likely at end of life, and I knew that I wanted to take time off to be with him and have sort of uninterrupted time with him during that period, and also to help my mom with what was going to be a difficult transition. But I remember being like literally unashamed about asking for this. This was going to happen. Here's what I was going to do. I planned for it going into it. Obviously, it's hard to plan something coming out of that, but I planned going into it. I set expectations on how I'd be reachable and when I would not, and what priorities were going to be. So I brought an unashamed but sort of a very structured way of dealing with it. And the reality is at that point I had been with an organization for a long time. I had performed well. I had certainly given more than my fair share of hours outside the normal working hours. So, I had contributed in a way that I felt I could take this drawdown. And I think more than anything else, it was my attitude. This was just going to happen. Now, I realize you can do that differently at different stages of your career. My real point is it all just contributes towards, as you're sort of building up a reputation of strong performance, organizations tend to give more latitude for things like this.
And I think that's just a really important question. I'm sure a lot of people wonder how to go through with that. And we've run a little bit over, but I just wanted to thank the three of you again for participating today. It was a really wonderful conversation. I learned a lot, and I'm sure all of our participants did as well. And any of the questions that we did not get to, we will answer offline. And another reminder that this recording will also be distributed to all of those who registered. So thanks again.
Thank you, Sarah, by the way, and
So
to Kelly and Emmett. It's been an incredible conversation, and thank you for everyone joining.
Thank you all.
And thank you too, Sarah. You were amazing. Thank you for organizing so well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.